Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, I got a fun and exciting video for you guys today because we're going over new technical details released about the Neo Geo AES Plus, which you guys are absolutely excited as I am to get a brand new Neo Geo in 2026, and honestly Plaion is doing everything right so far as the hardware design, marketing, and overall bringing the Neo Geo back to the consumer space in 2026. And thanks to Jotego, one of the developers on the MiSTer FPGA side of things, releasing some new information, we're going to be able to talk more about the technical details of the console itself, the overall DAC to get video out and make sure it is accurate to original Neo Geo hardware, some of the sound hardware, and some of the cartridges as well. But before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But honestly, everything Plaion is doing so far seems like they are absolutely trying to make this thing a 10 out of 10. And it is one of those things Neo Geo fans, myself included, have been burned in the past. And I'm not saying Plaion is going to do that. I'm just saying, compared to the Neo Geo X and even the Neo Geo Mini, this is what people wanted years ago. And it finally seems like we're going to be getting that. But there are a lot of technical details to go over, including the ASIC design and how everything is going to work. So it should be a really fun video. And my genuine hope when this thing comes out is it's a massive success, and that already seems to be the case. Representatives from Plaion have said they've expanded the overall production run because their allocation of what they thought they would sell in the lifetime of this thing in its pre-order phase is apparently all sold through within the first 24 hours. So I think even Plaion was surprised at just how popular this idea was, not just for people that don't own a Neo Geo and want to jump in at a lower price point, but also Neo Geo fans and collectors like myself who just want one more way to play games that we can already play already. Because that really is the funny part between my collection of AES, MVS, CD stuff, as well as MiSTer FPGA. I'm certainly not lacking ways to play Neo Geo, but I'm certainly excited to get a new one. Now right off the top, I will leave a link in the description below to some of the information here. Two different Spanish channels, Talk to Jotego, or actually recorded one of his exhibitions where he was talking about the different hardware, so they are linked down below. I did have to use a little bit of translation on this one, but I actually sent it to a friend who is a native Spanish speaker who's able to go over it and help me make sure that it actually made more sense than just trying to use auto translation. And again, if you don't know the name Jotego, he's made a ton of different cores on the MiSTer FPGA side of things, including some components of the Neo Geo core along with FurTech. And I mentioned that in my first video when I showed some of FurTech's reverse engineering schematics as well as some of his die scans and some of the Jotego repos as well, saying that you could definitely make a new Neo Geo AES in 2026 with the FPGA code, even if it wasn't going to be FPGA. And again, that is Plaion's plan. We now know they're going to be using two ASICs or application-specific integrated circuits. Now the reality of those is once they're actually manufactured, there is no changing them versus an FPGA chip where you can reprogram it on the fly. So they definitely need to make sure they get this thing 100% right, but apparently they budgeted in an initial run of chips, so if there is any issues, they can go back in and run them up again. And the reality situation is any sort of company like this and any sort of fabricator, you would never order your entire run of chips and have them all made before you validated the design basically against every sort of test you could possibly think of. So don't think of it in the way that they're going to spin up 500,000 or 1,000,000 chips here, and it seems like they might actually need that many. They'll probably get a very short run from the factory and go into validation to make sure everything works exactly like it should. And even though it is still a little bit funny, they basically said it's not an FPGA approximation, it is approximately exactly the MiSTer FPGA code base being applied to ASICs. That's something that we've always talked about on the channel, that the FPGA cores could actually be used to reproduce old silicon. And I feel like you're going to be seeing this happen more than once because apparently the rumor is Plaion has another console in development. And even though we have absolutely no idea what that is, it'll be fun to find out. But as far as the technical reproduction of a Neo Geo AES based upon community learnings from Jotego and FurTech, it seems like Plaion is doing everything correct, and we expect some really good stuff out of this one. And just so you know, Jotego also talked about the overall audio profile as well as the video profiles for analog out on the Neo Geo AES Plus, and actually doing more work to make sure the sound was as close to an original AES as possible. But the reality is there's multiple revisions, so you honestly have to dial this in a ton to make sure you get the proper and original sound, which is a very easy way for me to segue into my first soundtrack sample so you hear what something like The Last Blade would sound like on MiSTer FPGA. You can expect a slightly different sound profile on the AES Plus. But listen and I'll be right back. I mean, no matter how you slice it, the Neo Geo AES and MVS core sound incredible, and obviously that is a cheap dad joke pun to get over to Samurai Showdown, a game where you can actually slice things, but I expect to hear a lot of fun noises coming out of an AES Plus that are extremely anchored to real AES hardware. And speaking of the accuracy of the hardware, one of the other reasons they're using this ASIC design is so they can run at 5 volts. And honestly, that makes a big difference because the Neo Geo AES uses 5 volt logic as far as the actual system is concerned. If you think about it this way, if you know JAMA boards, you usually have 12 volt, 5 volt, and sometimes negative 5 volt. But as you get later on into overall hardware design, stuff like the Dreamcast, Naomi, and JVS stuff, you also end up with 3.3 volts on the power rails. Now, to make the system 100% compatible with old accessories and old games, you basically have to have that 5 volt running exactly as it should, or else you have to jump that voltage up or otherwise deal with a mismatch in voltage between 3.3 and 5 volts. So that is very good on the design front, because I wouldn't put an expensive Neo Geo AES cartridge into a machine that used 3.3 voltage logic and then try to jump it up, and that's basically what every single FPGA chip is going to use for the most part, is 3.3. And as far as why the letters are wrong on the Neo Geo CD pad, I really don't have any idea on that one. Maybe they can fix that before things actually go to manufacturing, but it is one of those things, definitely something I wish that they would kind of just touch base on a little bit more. And as far as the games are concerned, apparently those are going to be manufactured in Germany, not China, because apparently they have to have a very specific specification for them to work exactly as they should. So it really does seem like Plaion is doing their absolute best to make sure they pick the right manufacturers and the right engineering design to make sure that everything works exactly as expected, and that really is a dedication to the cause. And as far as the overall RGB out, apparently that's been measured as well, and basically designed so that it's going to be the best looking RGB you could possibly get out of a Neo Geo AES, which is great because depending on the revision of console you have or I have, you either get some really good RGB out or you end up with RGB that looks absolutely terrible. Because my personal AES here, I've never had it modded, and the RGB quality coming out of the back is worse than S-Video on this one. Because honestly, SNK made a few engineering mistakes in the background back in the day, like having bad RGB out on certain hardware or accidentally reversing the stereo audio signals on some of their boards. Left channel would be right and right channel would be left. Because it's one of those things, the engineers at SNK were quite talented, but even they weren't immune to making some engineering mistakes now and again. And as far as the DAC, or digital analog converter, for that RGB signal, they've apparently gone out and measured this to the nth degree. And that really is something that is easily achievable if you have the hardware and the knowledge, measuring the video output across different chipsets and different pieces of hardware until you figure out exactly what the digital to analog conversion should be to get that good RGB color value out. Because that really is the thing in the analog age. The color you saw on one TV would be completely different than the color you saw on a different TV, and depending on the monitor installed in the arcade cabinet, you could have the same game looking slightly different every single time you play it. And just so you know, again, I linked the two videos in the description below. If you're a native Spanish speaker, you're going to get a lot more out of them versus using auto-translate. But again, I sent this to somebody who I know speaks perfect Spanish because they grew up in a different country. So I was able to kind of translate a little bit of this with their help. So definitely a big bonus to that person who wanted to stay unnamed for this video. But as far as all the new technical information about the Neo Geo AES Plus, it all seems to be absolutely perfect. We're going to have some really great hardware, at least so far as we know. They've measured all of the different analog values coming out of different consoles to make sure we get a perfect RGB out. They've gone through all of the audio, and they're manufacturing everything in a way to make sure that it runs on everything. And that definitely shows a dedication to cause, because I want to be able to plug my AES Plus into my Sony PVM, my 20-incher, and then just basically play it the same way I would play MiSTer FPGA or my original Neo Geo. And again, I totally get it. I'm just retreading old territory here, but it's one of those things I absolutely love to do that. But you leave me a comment down below and you tell me, did you pre-order this one or not? I would be curious. The next time there's more tangible information, I'll definitely update the video, but this was an exciting one because more people out there want more details about the new Neo Geo AES Plus, and we got exactly that from Jotego, who consequently is a super fun dude to chat with. I talk to him every once in a while, super gracious guy, and I'm sure he's stoked to be part of this project. But short of that's the information. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, but I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.